Welcome to our second session on grief. And of course, just mentioning that word made me think of Charlie Brown. So to all the Peanuts fans out there, good grief. Yes? No? Okay. Bad joke. Anyway. Today we're talking about stage of grief of anger. For those of you that are following along in your Bibles at home, we will be reading the first chapter of Ruth. So, before we get to the reading itself, we do have a couple icebreaker questions, as always. First, when you were in high school, what adult were you especially close to other than your parents? There were a couple. The first one that comes to mind was someone that I believe I've mentioned in previous videos. He was a gentleman who in high school was Sunday school teacher. When I was in 8th grade was my confirmation sponsor. When I was in, I want to say kindergarten or 1st grade was my Sunday school teacher as well. Family friend. He was someone that I was very close with, and he was, not even was, he still is, like a second father to me. So, yeah, he's definitely the first one that comes to mind. What about you all? When you were in high school, what adult were you especially close to outside of your parents? Let me know in the comments below. And the second icebreaker question, when was the last time you went through a move? I believe that's saying when is the last time you moved. Last time I moved was a little over a year ago. It was mid-May of 2019. I started at my call here on May 19th. I want to say my wife and I got here May 15th? Something like that. 14th or 15th? Somewhere in that range. We spent a good chunk of the previous 2 days loading up the biggest U-Haul you can get, loading up my car after putting it on a trailer to be driven behind the, to be pulled behind the U-Haul. Katie loaded up her car. She had the dog in her car. I had the biggest stuffed animal my wife has, Big Bear, in my car, or in the U-Haul. And over the course of 2-ish, really a day and a half, but day one we went from Detroit area, Michigan to Springfield, Missouri, stopped off for the night. We then drove from Springfield, Missouri to here the next morning, and after doing a final walkthrough with our real estate agent, we had a few men and women from the church immediately come over and help with moving in. There were a couple women who went out and did grocery shopping for us and said, okay, you need this, you need this, you need this. Okay. They went out, they did grocery shopping for us, and in a matter of a day, we got the U-Haul unloaded, took the U-Haul back, and we were good to go. So yeah, that was the last time I went through a move. What about you all? When's the last time you all went through a move? Let me know in the comments below. So, like I said, our reading is in the first chapter of Ruth. Listen now for the word of our Lord. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Oprah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. When she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant to each of you, that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. And said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against us, or against me." At this they wept again. Then Oprah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. The first question. Naomi's family had moved to Moab. While there, she lost her husband and 2 sons. Excuse me. How might Naomi have been feeling? Like they should have stayed in Israel, cursed by God, bitter that God had let these things happen, sad and lonely, or something else? We can definitely imagine that she was feeling sad and lonely. To lose a family member is never easy. Unless it is a family member that you have absolutely no connection with, didn't know in the slightest. In that case, then you may not necessarily mourn their loss so much as mourn loss of opportunity to get to know them before they went. But nonetheless, losing a husband, losing 2 sons, I imagine that would make a person feel very sad, very lonely. She was probably very bitter that God had let these things happen as well. I could see that being an argument. We're not told necessarily that she did anything to anger God, that her husband or sons did anything to anger God, that her daughters-in-law did anything to anger God. We're not told that they were overly sinful, that they were in need of punishment, so to speak. So, in essence, it kind of raises the question raised by Rabbi Harold Kushner. Why do bad things happen to good people? Naomi probably feels a little bit like she doesn't deserve this. She has done nothing to merit this level of punishment, sadness, loneliness. So she's probably very bitter with God. I could see argument for feeling cursed by God. Whether or not she would have felt like they should have stayed in Israel, we're not told how the husband, the sons, die. If it's from the famine, well, it sounds like there was a famine in Bethlehem in Judea where they left. So that would not have solved the problem. We're not told if it's some kind of disease or plague that went around. So it's possible that if that were the case, maybe if they had stayed in Israel, they would have avoided this sickness, avoided this plague, but we're not told that, so we can only speculate as to that. That's sort of my response. What about you all? How might Naomi have been feeling, do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 2. Why did Naomi tell her daughters-in-law to return to their homes? She was concerned about their welfare. She was immersed in self-pity. She was gently trying to get rid of them. She was testing them to see if they wanted to go with her. She couldn't bring herself to ask them to leave their people. Something else. The 2 that stick out to me are, number 1, she's gently trying to get rid of them. They are daughters-in-law through marriage of her 2 sons, whom she has lost. She is mourning that loss. In essence, the daughters-in-law are very possibly reminders of that loss, so she's trying to, for lack of a better phrase, tie up loose ends. She's trying to remove those things from her life that remind her of her husband, her sons, and the loss that she feels upon their passing. The other answer that I can see, not to say that the other ones are not correct, but the other one I can see is she's generally concerned about their welfare. In that time and place, unfortunately, women had absolutely no power whatsoever. It was a heavily patriarchal society. So not only were women needing husbands for the sake of having someone to pay for the food, having someone to kind of be the provider in the home, they needed a man around to essentially tell them what to do. They needed a man around to make decisions for them, because women were not really able to make decisions for themselves, as far as I understand. And once a woman is given over for marriage, father no longer has say in the daughter's affairs. It's now the husband's. When the husband dies, okay, you have the rule of marrying the next oldest, and they are to bear a child in that initial husband's name, but well, now both sons are dead. So she is trying to look, there is a genuine argument for her being concerned for their welfare, wanting to make sure that they don't die widowed and childless, so to speak. She was definitely immersed in self-pity, but I don't see that necessarily as a reason for sending her daughters-in-law away. I don't see her as really testing them to see who would want to stay with her, though I guess that's as good of an explanation as any. It's a possibility. So that's my response. What about you all? Why do you think Naomi told her daughters-in-law to return to their homes? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Why did Ruth insist on going with Naomi? Because she loved Naomi? Because she felt sorry for Naomi? Because she had become dependent on her mother-in-law? Because she had become committed to Naomi's God? Because Naomi needed her? Something else. For me, I would say that a definite factor in it is her love, her commitment to Naomi. She saw a need, and she saw herself as able to fulfill that need. She saw Naomi as old, bitter, needing a listening ear maybe, and she could serve that role. It's possible that she had become committed to Naomi's God, and she did not want to go back to the lifestyle she had grown up with. Definitely, we could argue that she felt sorry for Naomi. And say all of these answers are very plausible, but the ones that really stick out to me are because she loved Naomi and because Naomi needed her. Those two are at least how I interpret it. Let me know if you disagree. I would love to hear your arguments in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question. At what point can you identify with the events of this story? I have lost a loved one. I've gone through a series of painful losses. My house is empty and I feel like I've lost part of my identity. I've been angry about a loss. I've blamed God for a loss. I have felt unworthy of others' support. Well, I've mentioned in the past my harshness against myself growing up in my adolescence and my going into early 20s. So definitely I have felt unworthy of other support. That is a hard truth, but it is truth nonetheless. Also, I have blamed God for a loss. When I was 10, I've mentioned this in other videos, I'm sure, but a family member of mine was murdered. While I didn't know them as well, they were very involved in the community, didn't really see them much beyond Thanksgiving, Christmas, and birthdays. Didn't really stay at their house when my parents were out of town. Nonetheless, I didn't see this loss as being merited. I have not done anything to deserve this. My family has not done anything to deserve this. So I blamed God for letting it happen. I was angry at God for letting it happen. So, along with that, I've been angry about a loss. Those two kind of go in tandem with each other. Definitely, I've lost a loved one. I've lost many loved ones. But that's my response. Let me know in the comments below. At what point can you identify with the events of this story? Question number 5. Who has been a Ruth to you? Someone who has gone out of their way to be there for you in a time of need, and what impact has that person had on you? I don't even have to think about that. My wife. I know that's probably a cop-out answer. I know that's probably the, well, duh answer, but at the same time, it is 100% the truth. My wife has been above and beyond supportive of me in my times of need. She has been a shoulder to cry on. She has not judged me for my vulnerability, something that I don't admit to very easily. She has been very good at getting the truth out of me. She knows when something's wrong. She can sense it. It's like a spider sense or something. And I say, through her being a Ruth to me, the impact that she has had on me is that not only am I more open about my emotions, but I'm not as ashamed of my vulnerability as I once was. I'm not as ashamed of my faults as I once was. In all truth, I've actually found a way to show love to myself where once I did not allow myself to feel love from myself, from my parents, from God, from anyone. That's my answer. What about you all? Who is a Ruth to you, and what impact have they made on you? Let me know. Question number 6 kind of is into the opposite of that. For whom are you like Ruth, a faithful and supportive friend in their time of need? I like to think that I'm a Ruth for all of my congregants. Hopefully that's the case. If not, then that's a growing edge of something I need to work on, but something that I recognize maybe I need to work on. Definitely, I am a Ruth for my wife. Just as she supports me, I support her. Just as she is able to sense when something is not completely right with me, I'm able to sense when something's not completely right with her. We kind of keep each other in check, and we're able to help each other find silver linings in otherwise, for lack of a better term, grim situations. I like to think that I'm a Ruth for all of my friends and family. Not that I want to be boastful about that, but I really can't think of anyone among friends, family, congregants that I wouldn't drop everything for and go to support in their time of need. But that's my response. What about you all? Who comes to mind when you think of who you are a Ruth for? Let me know in the comments below. Question number 7. Using Naomi's terms, in what way is your life full? In what way is it empty? And which word depicts your life now more accurately? In terms of being full, my life is full of love. Whether it's love from my wife, for my wife, from our menagerie of animals, for our menagerie of animals, from or for friends and family. Definitely amidst the pandemic, love for those in Katie's and my life, be they four-legged or two-legged. The love is definitely much more noticeable. The support network that we have is much more apparent to us in this time. In terms of how our life is empty, we're missing socialization. Now, I'll admit, I am an introvert. My way of recharging my battery is not going into a crowd and conversing with strangers. My way of recharging my battery is going into the bedroom and doing stretches on the floor. It's going onto the back porch and reading a book. It's sitting at the kitchen table and writing a chapter in my book where I am singularly focused on that and not on the cats play fighting and the dog begging for attention. I am an introvert, but even with that said, with Katie being an extrovert, with me being a social introvert, technically speaking, we are basically empty because all of those means of being social in the community, in the church, they're not happening. We're not having potlucks, we're not having game nights, choir practice isn't happening. Play practices are not happening. Holiday Island Singers, a community choir, is not happening. All of these things that we had for being social, being involved in the community, they have just come to a dead stop and they're not happening. Granted, we had a drive-in worship service this past Sunday, and we'll be continuing to do that going forward. But it's still not the same. You know, we're all in our own little kind of small world, our own cars. We are, as much as I'm making jokes, as much as I can hear a couple people laughing, I can't hear everyone laughing. As much as I can, you know, look through a windshield and see someone's lips moving, I can't hear them singing. There's still kind of barriers in between us all. So I think the emptiness is in regards to social life. As for which of the two that I think my life is right now, at this point, unfortunately, I would have to say emptiness. Just without all of the social interactions, without being able to visit congregants if they are in the hospital, things like that. A lot of those things that I, as a pastor, am called to do that are in my job description, I'm not able to do. So yeah, at this point in time, just with the pandemic going on, continuing to go on, there's a definitive feeling of life being a little bit more empty than full. But that's my response. What about you all? You know, in what way is your life full, and what way is your life empty, and what word best depicts your life right now? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe that's something we can pray for in the coming weeks. Which, speaking of, we are to our final question, which is, how can this group pray for you? As always, if you do have prayer requests, please leave them in the comment section. Send me an email, give me a phone call. I am here for you all. I hope that this session has been helpful. I hope this series is helpful for you all. Tomorrow is my day off, so we will not have another lesson until next Monday. But next Monday we'll pick right up, and we will be talking about the bargaining stage of grief. So hopefully I will see you there. Hopefully we'll get some comments, and until then, stay well, stay safe, and God bless.